Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian Fromertz, Tribeca Trade Group, and this is your end of day market recap for Tuesday, February 6th. Another, I would say, very interesting macro day on our hands. I will go through that really quickly with you guys. I know that the macro stuff is not always on the top of everybody's lists of what they want to hear in a market recap video. A lot of times you want to talk about single stock setups. I get that. We'll talk about that too in this video. But I just think that right now this is important when you have some volatility in bonds, you have some movement in the dollar. Those do provide some warning signals, right? And that's why we want to basically pay attention to them. So that said, first, risk disclaimer in front of you, everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. But I think this is probably one of the most important charts to kind of go over for the day. And that's what the UUP ETF, that's what the dollar did. Notice what happened here. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit, but I just wanted to kind of give you a sense of where the dollar has been, right? And what's been going on here in the dollar. It's made this nice little move outside. And again, this is the UUP ETF, but take a look at what happened here. And yesterday's price action, right? Big move up in the dollar, and it did take out a Virgin point of control. So, why is that important? Why is that significant? Well, first of all, if we look at the overall meaning of, why we look at the dollar is because it's kind of a gauge of risk on, risk off. And we certainly saw that in the last couple of years when the dollar was raging. It kind of just meant that it was not an environment for stock investors and equity investors, right? And that's kind of if we go back to my screen here, right? That's when this was going on, right? So that was a problem for the market when the dollar was doing this, right? And I could show you charts to kind of give you a sense of that, so the question, is like, okay, is this a situation where we're going to have to be really mindful of the strength in the dollar, and it could be, right? But first of all, we're not above these highs, and I think rising up to this Virgin point of control is kind of key, because once it's been taken out, it does represent overhead supply, and that knowing where sellers live is important. Now, it doesn't mean that that automatically you see a reversal off of that Virgin point of control. It's a battleground place for buyers and sellers. So knowing where there's overhead supply, right, is very important. So that said, notice what happened with the dollar today. It did move back lower. Again, it's not where it was, last week, but I think a pretty good sign to see price action kind of reject that level right there. So I think that once we kind of look at what equities did for today, I put this out on Twitter earlier. I said don't short, because I see a lot of people starting to get uneasy about what's going on in equities, the seasonality. We know that February is the third weakest month. So you kind of have those things in the back of your mind, right? That's smart to do all of this analysis. Issue is, I would not get over, like anything, right? Try not to overanalyze where you're making the wrong conclusions. So I always, in my analysis, and we do a weekend video for members, and I always start, and one of the first things that I say as we go through a few different points is I always say price is the most important thing. Yes, I'll look at the internals, I'll look at some indicators, right, to kind of give me a sense of what's going on, right? Everybody knows about the weaker breadth at this point. But overall, if price doesn't break down, right, you could talk about all the stats about, oh my God, this hasn't happened since such and such time, right, that we're seeing this market breadth. So yeah, you want to be on alert that something's not right, under the hood. But price can sometimes just, kind of hang out and wait for things to kind of change a little bit. And today was stronger breadth. Look at the bottom of the screen, right? Today was a much better breadth day. Will it be enough for the McClellan summation index to turn back higher? I don't know. I don't calculate that every day, but it's a step in the right direction. So we'll just kind of have to keep tabs on that and wait for proper signals, right? But this was not a signal to short, right? Just because you see breadth a little bit weaker, right? As far as the overall index goes, we did not break inside the value area for the week, right? That's the 1 hour chart and the daily chart. Also, we're still above the 5-period moving average, so there's no sell signal there either. Right, let's look at the Qs, which were a bit weaker today. There was this, felt like a bit of a rotation. Sometimes we're going to get those, right? When things go up, like when Nvidia goes crazy, goes, you know, well, I don't want to call it insane, but when you have that type of a move in Nvidia, eventually there's going to be some profit taking. That's logical, right? It's just what happens, right? People take some chips off the table, right? It's perfectly logical. That doesn't mean it's going to drop, you know, and retrace. It's not, to me, it's not a short, right? But everybody's different, right? Just because something goes up and gets overbought, it's not a short, in my opinion, right? And look, notice what it happened. Notice what it did today. Okay, so what I tend to look at when you have sometimes reversal candles, right? And we saw that we had one last week in the Qs. Somewhere last week, right? Didn't we have a reversal day? I don't know why I'm forgetting this, but maybe this was here. I think we tried to go higher and we kind of failed. But notice what happened. Like we didn't really lose the 5-period moving average. Now we did back in here, but we held the 20-day moving average. So, you know, the point being is there's going to be some profit taking from, you know, now and again. But right now, like in my thought was on this earlier is what I said is that, you know, that's an ugly looking, it's going to be an ugly looking candle for Nvidia. But notice it didn't break the 5-period moving average. Now it will eventually, right? It will eventually come in a little bit. But it just shows how strong right now and that there are some buyers on the sidelines because it filled this gap and it got bought again. You know, people are buying the dip in this name. You know, SMCI is another one. Amazing, right? You know, I keep thinking too, in the back of my mind, I've got voices that say, hey, you know, this thing is probably going to correct a little bit. But, you know, I took another target in this thing. This is just a trade from yesterday, by the way. 594 my entry point, and took some off at 670. The damn thing closes at 680, right? And I don't have a big piece on left in my trading account. I do own it in the TTG trend portfolio, and you know, not taking any targets in there right this second. All right, so that's kind of the overall market feel for the day is that that happened. And, you know, I laid this out for members this morning too. You know, I talked about what's going on in bonds, right? And, you know, one of the things that I think is important to watch is these lows from the month of January. Again, it wasn't the best price action in the world, but for now, we're holding on to the bottom of value. That's 120.09. And also on the weekly chart, right, 119.13. So we're still inside the value area for the year, and that's the important thing. So that's the main level that I'm concerned with, and that's what I discussed in our pre-market session this morning. A couple other points, and then we'll talk a little bit about stocks. But a lot of reversions to the mean, you know, again, taking some profits in the semis. And, you know, with the move in the dollar and of course, rates going down a little bit today, you know, what rallies, right? The solar companies and clean energy. Again, that is the relationship for now. Sometimes these relationships don't, you know, last forever, but right now that's the relationship that we have on hand right now is that, you know, it's basically inverse to what's going on with rates. Rates go higher, solar clean energy stocks go down, and vice versa. Small caps notched in a pretty good day. Here's the note that I sent out to members too. I just wanted to show this to you in case you're not not a member, but in case you're not, you haven't added yourself to our lists. Go to ttgtrading.substack.com. This is the midday note. Again, I try to make this as quick as possible for traders and investors to get through, right? Even if you're a part-time trader, right? Just kind of gives you a sense of what's going on, right? So we had some new 4-week, a little bit more new 4-week lows that were above the highs, but not as bad as yesterday, right? Once again, seeing more strength in things like industrials, healthcare, a little bit of tech. But like I said, there was more new lows yesterday. Right, it's a portfolio sheet which you do have to sign up for this, but we make it super cheap to get involved. And then I kind of go over, I went over the UUP chart, right? And then all of our charts, we've got triggers on this, right? Knowing when and where to get involved. Nucor is a name that had good earnings, and I generally do focus on strong names that are increasing their sales and increasing their earnings. We put together a earnings watch list. Right now we've got about 50 names that have had strong earnings or have gapped up. And Nucor is something to watch. Now I did add a trade today. Notice I took it off. I did not get the trigger that I was looking for. Right. So if you go to TradingView, which we will hopefully have this out for people to subscribe to this too. We're just waiting for one more thing to happen, and we should have it for everybody. I know I've gotten a lot of requests about this, but if we switch this to 1 hour, right? So, so here's how we're trading. Unfortunately, I got fooled on this. You forget that like 1 hour can be a long time. So I entered on the beginning of this bar, and that's a little bit of a trading mistake. I thought we had a chance to close inside value and turn the corner. We didn't, so I unwound the trade for like a paper cut loss, and I put my alert back to 180.84, right? And we'll see if this thing just decides it wants to turn the corner, right? A few other names that I'm watching. Whoops, it's not the right symbol. Snowflake. Right, so let's go back. So let's do this. Let's look at the 1 hour chart here for just a second. Notice that it bounced off the bottom of value here. Right, so it took out a VPOC. Right, just like we talked about with the US dollar. ETF, so took out a VPOC, a little bit of a fade, but just a fade to the top of value, and notice that it got back above its value area for the week. Now, if we look at the daily chart, all right, let me just make sure one thing here. All right, so what am I looking at here? Right, well, just noticing that VPOC also on the daily, and for now, it's just putting in a couple inside days, which means no change in trend. So I would be looking for continuation to the upside, before this thing reports earnings, which I think is in about a week or so. So I like this name. I'm not in it yet. I'm also watching, I really think that the travel names look pretty good. You're going to have a couple of these travel names report. Right, so here's Airbnb. It's getting there, right? If you wanted to, depending on your trading style, if you wanted to start a trade here versus, with a stop just inside its February value area, that's also something that can be done. I'm just waiting for a little bit of confirmation. I like to have that in my back pocket, and I'm watching for a break above 145. So this is how we break down things. And what we're doing here is we try to take the emotion out of the equation, right? So that this way it's basically you're going off the MarketWebs roadmap and you're saying, hey, I know exactly where I want to be long, right? And I know where the trade's not going to work, right? Just like with the Nucor example. But so this is close. So I'm waiting for this, and that's going to be 145. I mentioned a couple other travel stocks. So I'm really interested in what Expedia is going to do. Right, Expedia reports later in the week. Let's go to the daily chart here. I think people are still traveling like crazy. But here's the chart for Expedia. Again, it's a really nice looking chart setup, nice consolidation here. Now, unfortunately, earnings could ruin a chart. So we'll just kind of have to see what the results are going to be. Booking also is leaning to the upside. This is also going to report earnings, but I think a little bit later here. But this is also looking, so this is a more difficult stock to trade because of the stock price. Couple names that reported earnings. Talk a little bit about the restaurant names, just very quickly. Chipotle, last I checked, I'll double check here on the 1 hour chart, right? But it looks like it's up a little bit, right? Yeah, so making a nice little move. I think a couple of the restaurant stocks are looking interesting, right? Cava, which I know a lot of people are talking about too, right? Has had some strength. Didn't you know, didn't close on the highs, but I think definitely one to watch. And then also, like, if you're looking for another Super Bowl type trade, I'm watching Wingstop. And see if this name, notice how it's just sitting there on the top of value. Again, a little bit more of a high price stock, but notice the neat little consolidation in here, right? And I would be looking for, again, like a buy the rumor, sell the news, so Wednesday, we've got a few more days of the trading week. Reminder that we've got some more bond auctions, more Fed speakers this week. But for the most part, not too much economics. What else? I was going to talk about one or two other areas, but I'm drawing a blank. Oh yeah, Elf. How could I forget this little guy? So nice VPOC. I did buy some of this after hours, not a big position. But look at the you're going to see this in just a second. Look at the nice VPOC reversal. And we looked at this and the numbers were really good. And that's where I would rather buy the dip in things. When you've got a name that puts up good earnings. My thought was just that it ran too much into the report. But I mean, look at their numbers that they put up again, right? So the other thing with them, I mean, adjusted EPS 48, so talking about earlier about names growing, right? This is textbook for an example of that. 74 cents versus 48, estimate 57. And look at and also it has a history, right, of doing really well on earnings. Look at the last 6-7 earnings quarters and the price action after it reports. Very, very strong. A few other names that reported here after hours. I'm just going to refresh this. Right. Yum, speaking of a restaurant, of course, that's a China name. ENPH is up, right? I think that's getting some people excited about solar. Maybe the worst is behind solar. Right. It did take out a VPOC up there, right? So you can see the same on Thinkorswim as you can in a trading view. But let's see if it could turn the corner. I'm in no rush on this type of stuff. Right. It'll be interesting if maybe the worst is behind it, because I don't think the report was very good, but sometimes that's an indicator when there's a bad report and the stock goes up, that most of the bad news is priced into the stock. Also, Fortinet turnaround here, right? So this could kind of get perhaps the cyber names, which have just been kind of consolidating a little bit. I would be watching CrowdStrike tomorrow. Right. Notice, there's maybe a little bit of profit taking going on in the name. Right. And there's what CrowdStrike is doing. It's just sitting there on the top of value. ESTC is another name. Right. More, software too. Again, just consolidating. VRNS had a good earnings report. See how this shaped up for the day. I mean, look at the consolidation, So again, this was a good looking chart. It didn't close on the absolute highs, but nice. And maybe if it does sit back here a little bit, that might be a better entry than in here. That's something that I'll be watching. And how could I forget this guy? Palantir. Look at the volume in Palantir today. I was surprised. I did think that this would stop at the Virgin point of control, but notice how it just jumped over it. Right. So again, battleground between new buyers and some sellers out there, supply. And look at the volume. Do you think that the new buyers won out on this thing today? Right. So, just humongous volume. I see this pushing up to 23.12. That's where I think that this is going. And now that and you could also trade this versus the top of value. Another thing that you could do is if it has an inside day or starts the day a little bit lower tomorrow, right? That would be on my watch list. Definitely on my watch list for tomorrow. All right, guys, that is it. Remember, if you like this type of analysis, right, we do provide that, as well as I go over more in depth during the day. So you can go to tribecatradegroup.com and then also go to the Substack, which I mentioned shortly ago. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow.